But I want to begin with that escalating tension between the U.S. and China reverberating throughout Asia over Speaker Pelosi's anticipated stop in Taiwan during a tour of the region this week. China's foreign ministry doubling down today, saying that there will be, quote, serious consequences if she makes the visit. Taiwan is self-governed, but China claims that as part of its territory in an agreement, the One China policy agreed to 40 years ago with the U.S. Joining us now is New York Times diplomatic correspondent Michael Crowley and retired Admiral James Stavridis, the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. So, Admiral, first to you, John Kirby telling our colleagues on Morning Joe today that nothing is unusual about this trip. But no speaker has gone there since Newt Gingrich 25 years ago. And it follows President Biden saying 3 times that the U.S. would defend Taiwan, the last time being May, rather than sticking to a more nuanced policy of strategic ambiguity. So was it a mistake for the president to signal that the military doesn't want her to go, making it potentially look like the U.S. is giving China veto power over the speaker if she doesn't go?
Yeah, let me start by saying no, China should not have veto power on U.S. citizens, U.S. elected officials, or U.S. military who go to Taiwan. On the other hand, I think the president was well within the bounds of propriety, indicating that this would not come at a helpful time, shall we say. We've already got plenty of tension in the international system, including a major war in Ukraine. We're constantly trying to pull our allies, partners, and friends together. This is one that probably is not necessary, let's put it that way. And of course, putting my old Pentagon hat on, you know, you've got to move carriers, you've got to move jets, you've got to protect the Speaker of the House, number 3 in line to the governance of the United States of America. So I think the president's well within his rights to kind of gently indicate, boy, this probably is not terribly helpful. The Speaker is the Speaker of the House. She's going to make her own decision. I suspect in the end, she'll probably consummate this visit quickly and move on to the rest of the Asia trip. But going to be some white knuckles in the Pentagon until this one's over.
Indeed. And Michael Crowley, I want to point out that former Joint Chiefs Chairman Mike Mullen went to Taiwan in March for the Biden administration, along with several other former officials. And he spoke about Pelosi's potential visit on Sunday on CNN. Take a listen.
I would expect that it is very possible that she could still make a surprise visit. As controversial and as important as this has become, she's been there many, many times in that area of the world. She feels strongly about supporting the kinds of values that we stand for and working with our friends. So again, and Taiwan has been a friend for a long time, and particularly in a bipartisan way. So it wouldn't surprise me if she went.
So, Michael, that, of course, with our friend Fareed Zakaria on CNN, what signal does it send to the world and to Taiwan if she does visit as early as tomorrow?
Well, Andrea, it signals, as we have seen for some time now, increasing American support for Taiwan militarily and diplomatically, edging closer and closer to a line that China has declared unacceptable. You know, China's red line here ultimately is the Taiwanese Declaration of Independence. And over time, what has happened more and more is that the U.S. is recognizing Taiwan and interacting with Taiwan in a way that suggests it does have a kind of sovereignty, a real sovereignty, that I think most people in Washington would like to see it have, but they understand that, you know, that China would not accept actual independence. But visits like this symbolically demonstrate that Washington sees this as an autonomous entity of its own, you know, the equivalent of a nation, even though we don't recognize it that way. And it's really almost like a game of chicken now. You know, how close can we get to the line of treating Taiwan as though it is an independent state? And how far can China go to warn us, to push us back, and to warn Taiwan against any declaration of independence without having to use military action? I don't think anybody wants to see a war here, but we don't know who might cross over that line first and be willing to fight over it. And clearly this is very provocative to China. And as the Admiral said, I think the Biden administration at this point in time as they're dealing with this crisis in Ukraine and trying to figure out how to push Russia back, isn't looking for another major global crisis in this particular moment.
And, of course, the particular moment being right before a potential third term for President Xi in an unusual party Congress coming up. So, Admiral Stavridis, I want to turn to Ukraine because you've been talking about trying to get some of that grain out. The first ship is actually sailing as we speak, and it left the port in Odessa after a very narrow demining of that harbor by the Ukrainians. There was an agreement, as you know, with Turkey and the United Nations and Russia. So this is exactly what you've been talking about. This is not a NATO ship. You know, it was a Freeport ship flagged. Let's talk about how important this is in getting this out. And also, Mike Mullen, one of your colleagues, Admiral Mike Mullen, said that he's surprised that President Biden hasn't sent U.S. ships and NATO ships to create this humanitarian corridor before now.
Well, let's recognize that the only reason Vladimir Putin has acquiesced in this arrangement, brokered quite skillfully, by the way, by the Turks, well done, Ankara. But the only reason Putin has acquiesced is because he knows if he does not, those NATO warships are coming. Those U.S. Navy warships are coming. We've done this before, as you and I discussed a week ago. We conducted this kind of mission back in the 1980s, moving oil through the Strait of Hormuz, contested by the Iranians. We certainly have the capability to do that. Russia recognizes that. I think that's why they've come to the table. I'll close by saying, put yourself in the position, by the way, of that captain of the first of these big tankers. It's called the Rizzoni. That's a white-knuckle ride up there, conning that ship, as we call it, driving the ship through a narrow, cleared channel. So my hat is off to the mariners that are going to execute this mission. And final thought, unfortunately, Putin may still try to interfere, perhaps in some kind of false flag operation where it's not clear who's throwing sand in the gears. But all in all, Andrea, this is a very good day for the Ukrainians and an even better day for the North Africans and the folks in the Middle East who will receive this grain. They need it. They need this grain to avoid real food scarcity. So a good day. Let's hope it continues to go to form.
And let me impose on you and jump around a little bit because I meant to ask you, Admiral, you know the Taiwan Strait. How narrow is that? I think it's only about a mile at its narrowest between the mainland and Taiwan when I was there last in the 90s. Talk to me about just how difficult that is and where is the Ronald Reagan now, the aircraft carrier?
It's not quite that narrow, but certainly it is a very narrow passage. And it also has islands in and around it that you know, Quemoy, Matsu, which are manned by the Taiwanese and are, in effect, their forward eyes and ears. I think that strait is about to be in the headlines because the Chinese response here, if the speaker does go, is not going to be to attack Taiwan, obviously, but look for a major aviation movement and deployment over the strait, possibly Chinese warships going in there. The Reagan is the carrier. You're correct. They are approaching the island of Taiwan now. They will be operating in and around those waters. China could respond in the air, by sea, or finally by cyber. Those are all things you could see.
Michael Crowley, Admiral James Stavridis, thanks to both of you for your expertise. It's really appreciated.